All right, what's up, Mortgage Coach and Trust Engine community? I have been really working hard to bring clarity to chaos in the housing industry and interviewing a lot of folks lately on this NAR settlement. Now, I am an optimist, so I always look at things, and wherever there's problems, challenges, I'm like, where's the opportunity? So I'm going to take my opportunistic view and insert that. But I'm doing this playlist. So if you're watching this, you are in our YouTube Mortgage Coach channel. And there is an actual channel, a playlist for getting ahead of NAR. And it wouldn't be a complete list without bringing Gary Acosta into the conversation, the founder and leader of NAHREP. And just, Gary, I look at you as a real estate and housing entrepreneur. I mean, you've done a lot of things that are just purpose-driven to help communities, and then you do things that are profit-driven. But I look at you as a purpose and profit entrepreneur. I hope you're cool with that framing. And
no, I love it. I appreciate that, Dave.
Yeah. So for any new loan officers that are in the business, you mind just giving them a minute on yourself and NAHREP, and then we'll get into the topic at hand.
So let me first say, Dave, thanks for inviting me to the show. And I am a product of the mortgage business. So I started in this industry working for a community bank, and I ended up being a mortgage broker and ended up being a mortgage banker for a number of years before I started NAHREP, the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. So mortgage people are my peeps. I come from, that sector of the business, and it really guides a lot of the thinking that I have. About 24 years ago, a colleague of mine by the name of Ernie Reyes, who was a real estate broker when I was a mortgage broker, and I took the leap of faith to start NAHREP. And we just did a lot of business with Hispanic home buyers and recognized that this was a growing segment of the business, and there needed to be some focus on it, some best practices, some perhaps advocacy. And Ernie had kind of a political background. I was more of an entrepreneur myself, to your point, and ended up being the right combination and the right timing. And today NAHREP is the largest Latino business organization in the country. So it's been an interesting ride. It's been a lot of fun. Been a lot of ebbs and flows along the way, but I'm delighted to see what's happened over the last few years.
Right on. Well, let's get into the topic. So, the view I want to take in, folks that follow our channel, I'm always like, how can we help you get ahead of things? Let's not be reactive. Let's be proactive, default aggressive, as Jocko Willink would say in Extreme Ownership. Let's get default aggressive. And then let's also turn this into an opportunity to, grow our success. Whether you're a real estate agent, whether you're a mortgage professional, how can you win? How can you be on the side of this is a business growing opportunity? So with all that said, and you could pick realtors, mortgage. We should probably lean towards mortgage. Although a lot, I'm trying to create this content so that our mortgage people will be sharing this with real estate people, and
Sure.
they'll be leading together. But what does it mean to get ahead of it from your perspective?
Well, I think that any time, and this applies to just about any other sector, that there is change, and there's certainly significant changes that are coming and are actually happening as we speak. There's opportunity. And so I think as individuals and as human beings, we tend to resist change, and we tend to see it as a negative because we like to be able to predict what's going to happen next, and we're more comfortable when we know what that's going to be. So just the uncertainty of it, I think, is always challenging for people. But if you can really embrace that, and you really see that those are the opportunities where real growth and real opportunity for success and profit really exists, then you should embrace it, because I think that's what's happening right now.
Well, I'm going to let you, as we go through this dialogue, pick, do you want to call out the challenge or the opportunity? I'm going to jump on opportunities myself, but to me, one opportunity is, by and large, the buyer's agents who now have to demonstrate value, negotiate their comp, get a signed agreement, are going to become more process oriented. They're, listing agents forever have had they've given listing presentations, and that's how they get listings. And now I think it professionalizes that buyer agent relationship. and it pushes the industry to justify their value and deliver the value as they, before they even show a home. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I would almost take a more of a counterintuitive position on that. I think you could make a very strong argument that buyer's agents do more of the heavy lifting than listing agents tend to do. And if you kind of lay it out in terms of tasks and responsibilities, the listing agent has an important job. There's no question. They market the property, they work with the MLS, they make sure that the listing is managed, they field offers, and they help negotiate a transaction that benefits the seller. But the buyer's agent has, an even broader set of responsibilities. So they're working with buyers that in many cases have never gone through the process before. So they have to educate those buyers on how that process is actually going to play out. They have to help them prepare for the mortgage process, how to document their income, how to make sure that they're in a position to be able to qualify, not just for a mortgage, but for a good mortgage, a competitive mortgage. And then they have to go through the process of helping them understand what they can afford, look at the right properties that fit in that price band, and then actually produce the offers, interface directly with the listing brokers. And there's no guarantee, even with that process, that those transactions are going to close. And so if you talk to a lot of buyer's agents right now, or over the last couple of years, they'll tell you they've probably had to work with 4 or 5 different customers for everyone that closes. So there's a lot of heavy lifting involved in the buyer's agent relationship. Now, to your point, I think you're right. I do think that process and that set of services is going to have to be a little bit more memorialized and documented. There have been a lot of, a long history of buyer's agents not necessarily working with a formal agreement with their clients. That's going to have to change. So the work that they do, the services they provide, and the compensation they receive is going to have to be clearly articulated in a buyer's agreement. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I actually think that's a good thing for the business. My concern in the business is, and my concern was how things have progressed subsequent to the class action lawsuits, is the attack on what is at the center of those lawsuits, which is the whole practice of broker cooperation, which I think has been, misrepresented in the press and misunderstood by the general public. There's the notion that somehow this is collusion and this has resulted in higher commission rates and whatnot. I don't think there's much evidence to support that. I think the practice has actually worked pretty well historically. There's a lot of ways we can improve this industry, Dave. There's a lot of things that we can improve, that we can do to improve efficiency, improve, the affordability element of the transaction. But I think that anything that we do as an industry, we have to begin with the notion or the understanding that we should not do anything to make it even more difficult for first-time home buyers, who are essential to the health and well-being of our industry.
Yeah, couldn't agree more to that narrative, and I'm glad that you share that, because there's no doubt that the job of a buyer's agent is not trivial, and I almost wonder that as different types of sellers go into, I'm going to sell my home, are they going to put more? Well, first of all, I think there's going to be just a lot of variations, of how it plays out. But there's going to be people that hey, I'm going to go low cost on the listing agent, and let's just say commoditize that, and then I'm going to put a lot of money on the buyer's agent. I want to make my house super attractive to buyer's agents. I have zero personal idea on how that's going to play out.
That actually tends to happen when we're in more of a buyer's market per se. As you know, we've been in a seller's market for many, many years, longer than I've seen in a long time. Usually this is a cyclical market, and we have times when it's more of a seller's market and the seller has more leverage in the transaction. And then we have markets where it's a buyer's market and the buyer has more leverage in the transaction. And the scenario that you described tends to happen more frequently, even historically, when it comes to being a buyer's market. If I'm sitting here, I want to sell my house, I want to make sure that I get as many people to see that this home is for sale as possible. And I'm willing to compensate agents who bring me a buyer when that deal closes, maybe even more than I would in a seller's market environment.
Yeah, agreed. So here's one of the things I'm personally, I don't want to say excited because it's it's going to be really tough for the industry. But one of my missions, and I know you share this because it's number one on the NAHREP 10, is the fact that I don't think agents or mortgage professionals lean in enough on how homeownership creates wealth. And and I've interviewed a lot of buyers agents. Hey, what's your value prop? And they're like, I'm a local market expert. I've got great negotiation skills. I've got this trusted network of mortgage, title, escrow, home inspector. I've been doing it for 20 years, and this is my volume. And I'm exaggerating to make a point,
Yeah.
but I don't really hear, all. And by the way, I think they're still going to need to share those things in unique ways, but I'm going to help you achieve wealth with real estate and achieve financial freedom, and then literally deliver an advice experience where they're helping consumers make better decisions and achieve wealth with real estate. And so I think it's going to push mortgage and real estate to get better at telling that wealth accumulation story with real estate. What are
I
your
think
thoughts
that
on that?
I do. I think that's really great. There are agents that have done a good job of that in the past. They're less
But by
transactional.
the way, it's a small number. Don't you agree? It's a pretty.
Maybe. I mean, you may be right. In fact, I'm sure you're right. Yeah, I think one of the criticisms of the industry is that it is overly transactional, right? So, you close the deal, you move on to the next deal. But there are some agents that I think have taken a much more, holistic approach to their relationship management with their customers and have done some of the things that you've just described. Homeownership is the gateway to the middle class in America and has been for decades. But it is not necessarily the end game. It is the means to a better quality of life and the beginning of wealth creation for many, many families in this country. So for those that see, that have good guidance and agents who provide great service, their customers understand that fully, and they see how this whole experience and process can lead to financial stability and financial freedom ultimately.
Yeah, the numbers I cite all the time. I believe it's the Fed that says the average. This was from 2022, so they're a little dated, but the average renter's net worth is 10,400, and the average homeowner is like 398,000. Almost 400. And given that they're a couple years dated, I would have to imagine that's widened. And from my perspective, that is the front line of the wealth gap in America.
That's a pretty compelling data point, and we
Yeah.
use it frequently.
Is that the
Well,
latest data point? Do you have any other new data on that?
I think the ratio is fundamentally the same, and
40 times.
that
Yeah.
is homeowners tend to have 30 times the wealth as non-homeowners, essentially.
Yeah.
So if that doesn't make the case, I don't know what would, but that's absolutely true.
Yeah. And so anyways, well, part of my hope and part of my mission is to, turn loan officers into advisors. And I do believe now that mission has widened to turn realtors into real estate advisors, and to help more people get into homeownership, and to help people make better decisions around how they build wealth and eventually have homeownership and financial freedom. Because I think that
I
is
think that that's a great way to look at it. As you know, there's roughly 1.5 million realtors in the United States, and there's somewhere between 4 and 5 million transactions that transpired last year. And you probably have 10 to 20% of those agents that do 80% of that business. So you probably have 50% of that network that did one or fewer transactions in the last year. So I think for those agents that have been productive and want to build substantial businesses, this is going to be an opportunity for them, because I do think there is going to be attrition in the industry, and that's not all bad. I do think that fundamentally we want this industry to be a destination where the most proficient people possible are out there guiding people through probably the most significant and most challenging transaction that they'll ever encounter in their lifetime. So those that see this as a full-time big picture opportunity from a business standpoint, they're probably going to do even better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm gonna pull up your NAHREP 10 real quick, because I feel like it's such a valuable I don't know, framework. And I would urge anyone listening to this interview, if you have not like downloaded this yourself, if you don't have this somewhere that you reference, like it's pure gold. Like these are the NAHREP 10. Real quick, when did you create these, and what was the why that when you put this NAHREP together?
Yeah, so I think it's been I think it's been like 9 years. I think we dropped it in 2015. And there was a couple things that were sort of motivating us to do it. And number one was the establishment of the Hispanic Wealth Project, which we started in 2014. And so I think to your point, we started to see that there was a bigger picture for us as an organization, that Hispanic wealth was something that was probably somewhat misunderstood, and there wasn't a whole lot of data around. And so we thought as an organization, we were well positioned to provide leadership on the subject of Hispanic wealth for two primary reasons. One, Latinos and probably the majority of Americans have most of their wealth in their home equity. And then secondly, a secondary source for a lot of Latinos in this country is small business ownership. And we're an organization that's largely made up of small business professionals and whose mission is to advance home ownership. So that made sense for us. So that was one reason that we felt we needed to memorialize basically a set of values and principles that the organization rallied around. And the second was any good organization, I think, needs a constitution of sorts, something that its members can point to when people ask them, what is NAHREP all about and why are you a part of this organization? And I think that this NAHREP 10 really gives a way for the organization to galvanize themselves around a set of principles.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I want to show another image that I came across recently, and I've been sharing a lot in the marketplace. I think it's your principle. I think it's number 4, but correct me, around minimizing debt.
Yeah.
But this is an image that really does a nice job of outlining just how much debt has skyrocketed in the last 20 years. But I mean, this is just stunning. When you look at how much debt has skyrocketed since 2020 over 4 years, and we are at a point now where there's never been more debt in America. There's car loans, credit cards, loans against 401ks. And I really think, we talked last time I interviewed with Kristen, we talked about, hey, there's a financial literacy crisis in America, but there really is a debt crisis in America. Would you mind just speaking to your tenant, rule number 40, and how you think both real estate and mortgage professionals, because I think like part of my leadership is you need to be mortgage, you need to be a debt advisor, and you also need to, yes, you need to pre-qual loans, tell people how much to qualify for, but you need to how do we make decisions to achieve financial freedom? But I also think realtors, while they don't need to do that, they need to do a better job of picking their loan officer around who's going to be a better debt manager and who's going to be a better wealth creator. And any thoughts you have on that?
Yeah, I think that first of all, not all debt is the same, right? So
Correct.
there's debt that we utilize to purchase an appreciating asset like a piece of real estate. And that's one category of debt. And then we have another category of debt, which is more unsecured credit card debt, personal loans, those types of debt, and even car loans might fall into that bucket.
And student loans.
Because those are depreciating assets, and student loans as well. And so, so first of all, understanding the different categories of debt and really helping people understand that minimizing debt is an investment in itself. And that is probably the investment that'll give us the best ROI that you can get out there in the marketplace. If you're paying 15% on credit card debt, paying that off is essentially and effectively providing you with a 15% ROI on that money. There's probably nowhere else where you're going to get that kind of return on a consistent basis. And so I also think about it in terms of peace of mind, right? How important it is for us as individuals to have peace of mind about our financial status. We all know that money is a primary reason why people get divorced. It's a primary reason for mental health issues and whatnot. And I think all of those issues can be tied to debt. So I do believe that minimizing debt and utilizing debt in a intelligent way is one of the core tenets that anybody has to have when it comes to taking a holistic viewpoint towards wealth and just the overall financial well-being that anybody can pursue.
Yeah, I would love to, and maybe we can get some micro content with how you answer this. Last interview we did, it was with Kristen Messerly, who's the executive director of First Home IQ now. And we've really started building this roadmap of, what is the financial literacy that people need to have by 18? Because by 18, old enough to vote, old enough to have a credit card.
Wow.
And then, by 21, old enough to drink, should be old enough to know how you made a point that having a mortgage, real estate with mortgage leverage, if you really understand home appreciation and the leverage of a mortgage, like, I just think everybody should understand how that works. They should understand how compound interest works.
Sure.
And what it means to their life. And they should also understand that, hey, if you get in debt and you prepay the mortgage, like, how much faster could you be debt free? How much interest could you save? There's just some, and we've come up with these 5 tenets, and how appreciation works, how leverage mortgage works with home appreciation, how to become debt free faster, and that every time you get into debt, you should look at options, and then you should look at how those options are going to perform over time. What are, just shooting from the hip, what are some of the core tenets that you think that like 18-year-olds should know? Because they're going to start getting hit up by credit card companies. They're going to be making decisions on how they finance college.
I think at the top of that list is understanding what a credit score is and how that credit score is going to play a significant role in the quality of life that you're going to have for decades, essentially. And there's so much more, I think, data out there that shows how credit score affects so many different things, both financial and non-financial. So I would put understanding credit scores at the top of that list. And then secondly, I think that, at least as it pertains to the Latino community, is there's a mindset that, we speak about inside of NAHREP and inside of the Hispanic Wealth Project. And that is, nobody questions the work ethic of the Latino population. We have, a very high work ethic. In fact, the data shows that we have the highest workforce participation rate of any demographic in the United States. But we have a worker's mentality and not an owner's mentality. So we don't think about investments and we don't think about owning assets in the way that we need to create long-term generational wealth for ourselves and our families. So those are the 2 things that I would point to right away. People have to understand their credit score, first and foremost, and second of all, need to understand the difference between earning money and owning assets, and why both of them are essential in a long-term financial mindset.
Yeah, no, I love that. I hadn't thought, I mean, the credit score is, well, you added a thought that I hadn't considered as much, but you said how it works. And I do think the industry and the different nonprofits and organizations that serve, they do a pretty good job of like how it works and just kind of at a linear level, but how it's going to impact your life. I think there's probably not enough education and inspirational education, like, hey, this is how it works. And this is, like brother A and brother B. And, brother B at 18 did X, Y, Z. Brother, A did X, Y, and Z, and took one brother until his 30s or 40s to dig out of the hole that he got himself in. So I really love that, how it impacts your life. And then the ownership mentality, we do a lot of studies. I think Kristen surveyed, I want to say, like over 6,000 Gen Z and millennial, and more, it's not just a Latino issue. Like, Americans don't think, they're going to be able to own. And so, but any thoughts on how to help build the ownership mentality? Have you thought of some concepts that we could, build off of that help create an ownership mentality?
I mean, I think one of the things we try to do inside of NAHREP is we actually have certified trainers for the NAHREP 10 principles. And that's certainly one of the centerpieces of the NAHREP 10 at the end of the day, is understanding that. So trying to disseminate that information to networks that go beyond just the real estate industry is part of what we do. I've also been an advocate for financial education to be in public schools. It doesn't make any sense to me why that is generally not the case, although we've started to see some movement in that direction in certain states. It should be. And I look
It needs to be.
It needs to be. And I look at, again, you look at California, it's a state, and there are several now, where more than 50% of the school-age children in the state of California come from diverse communities, Hispanic communities predominantly. So that's where they get their information. That's where they get their education. So investing in our schools and making sure that our schools have financial education as part of the curriculum, I think is a game changer that we need to all advocate for.
Yeah, well, I mean, as you know, with First Home IQ, I haven't given up on governments or schools to take it, but I'm not waiting for them.
Nor should you.
Yeah, and I really do believe that mortgage and real estate professionals, well organized, trained, resourced in an organized way, we can be the change agents that go out into the communities and deliver financial literacy to, by 18, you need to know X, by 21, you need to know Y. And let's go out. And by the way, we've had a lot of success since we saw you last. We've had a number of mortgage companies join the mission. Movement Schools has put our curriculum in their schools and is promoting us.
That's incredible.
The MBA will be announcing in Q3 that they're going to get behind our nonprofit and really push it through the MBA. And anyways, Kristen and I should give you an update. It's been pretty exciting what's been accomplished since last time we interviewed you. Well, let's do this before we run out of time. I'm sure you put a lot of thought and you're giving a lot of advice to both mortgage and real estate folks. So what is, if there were 2 or 3 things, here we are, middle of May, supposedly this is all going to enact by August 17th, which I don't know how that's going to happen, but that is the current date that's out there. What are 2 or 3 things that you just want to push mortgage and real estate professionals to do to get ahead of this?
So from a macro level, Dave, the economic fundamentals are still with us. Every year there's 1 million new households formed in the United States. They all need a place to live. The math is pretty compelling. The demand for the services we provide will have ebbs and flows, but it is not going to go away. It's only going to increase over time. So it's a good place for us to be fundamentally. Having, I think, in a mature, I speak a lot about emotional intelligence. People are going to gravitate. And when I say people, I mean employees, team members, as well as customers are going to gravitate to people who can remain calm in the face of change and in the face of adversity. Being a source of unemotional, but very thoughtful and pragmatic information is going to attract, people are going to be attracted to people like that. Who see this as an opportunity, can remain calm, can make good judgments, can pursue the right path moving forward. Be that kind of person. Be the kind of person that is almost like everything that's coming around the corner and nothing's a surprise, and people will be attracted to you. I do think also it goes without saying that we're going to see substantial technological advances over the next few years. Probably more technology advances in the next 2 years than we've seen in the last 10 years or maybe even the last 20 years combined. So technology is going to change a lot of what we do moving forward. I think a lot of people have heard this, but I can't repeat it enough. It's not technology that's going to displace us. It's going to be people who know how to use technology, who are going to thrive and take market share, and who are going to displace people who do not know how to use it moving
Yeah,
forward.
well, no explanation mark on that. I mean, Moore's law is, every 10 years, technology evolves. 50 years of tech is going to happen. And so according to Moore's law, in 2 years, that would be 10 years worth of change. And then to your point, I think that Moore's law is old school, and it's now 20 years
Yeah,
of
I think
change
it's
is going to
actually,
happen in 2 years.
yes, that's
Yeah.
exactly right.
So I completely align on that.
And then I would be remiss, Dave, if I didn't speak specifically about growth markets and the Latino market being the one segment that's guaranteed to do nothing but grow over the next 20 years.
Yeah.
The Urban Institute put out a report a couple of years ago that said that 70%, that 70% of homeownership gains over the next 20 years will come from the Hispanic sector. So it's not just Southern California and South Texas and Florida. It's happening in the Midwest and the South and markets like Des Moines, Iowa, Nashville, Tennessee, and Louisville, Kentucky. That's where some of the biggest homeownership gains that we're seeing from the Hispanic sector take place. These are customers that are passionate about the product that you're serving, that are grateful for the service that you provide, and who will tell everybody they know, if you take good care of them, that you're somebody to do business with.
Yeah. And my closing thought, and I'm going to give it to you for your closing thoughts and how people can reach out to you. But for any mortgage or real estate professional, listening to this, the push I have is to upgrade the level of value and education that you give to every person. If it's a realtor that talks to you about homeownership, if it's a mortgage professional, like if you just went from every credit report you ran to doing a pre-qual, but you actually show them how mortgage with appreciation works, and you showed them how, hey, you could rent out a bedroom and invest that and compound it.
Sure.
How that works. Like if you gave them, I don't know, 5, 10 little micro lessons that would take you 5 to 10 minutes to deliver, that if you did that, we would, put a real dent in financial literacy. And you know what else? You would have higher conversion rates. You would have more referrals. You'd close more business. You'd sell more homes. And so just, those are my closing,
You're 100% correct. It is all about sharing, information, being transparent, being a source of quality information, and being a real service provider. If that's your mission, if that's something that you are committed to and improving on a consistent basis, this is going to be a very lucrative time for you moving forward.
So for anyone listening to this, best ways to, follow you, best, whatever should they go to your website, sign up for a newsletter?
The NAHREP.org website, you can see the various activities we have. We have about 100 chapters throughout the United States. We do about 500 educational events a year. We host 2 major conferences. Our conference in September will have 7,000 plus people here in San Diego. So yes, we invite you, and we think that you'll find a lot of value in participating in NAHREP.
And what are the best social media places to follow you? I mean, you've got a podcast now, you're
Yeah,
active,
so,
but what are the best places to follow you?
You can go to GaryAcosta.com, and that's where you get my weekly blog. And I do podcasts on leadership and podcasts on wealth building. And hopefully there's some great content there that will also supplement your participation.
Well, hey, I have been in technology my entire life, and I believe that technology changes the world. But I also believe that it's about 10% technology, it's about 20% data, and it's about 70% leadership, that really creates transformation and value. So make sure you're following Gary. Any other closing thoughts before we wrap it up, Gary?
No, Dave, first of all, thank you again for the invitation. I think you do a fabulous job. You're one of the icons of our industry. I appreciate you having me on your show, and we'd love to have you at one of our conferences in the near future.
Yeah, no, I'd love to do that. So guys, I hope you got lots of value. If you have not subscribed to this channel, make sure you subscribe so that you get updates when we push new content. If you heard something you liked, you want to see the links, they'll all be down below in the show notes. Also follow savageinsights.com. whatever's coming next that I'm doing, and I'm doing something every single week, is at the top. I also have a mobile club, make sure you opt into that. It's either the second or third link. It's savageinsights.com. So take care, everybody. And Gary, thank you very much, my friend.
Thanks, Dave. My pleasure.
All right. Take care.